Welcome to the Truth in My Days podcast, where we defend the Word of God against the challenges of men.
Hello all. Welcome back to the Truth in My Days Apologetics Program. Today, we have Sonia Torres speaking with John Torres. John is speaking about whether it is possible to have meaning in life without a God. We are continuing from the last episode. We hope you enjoy.
Whether something matters or not, though, isn't that kind of subjective?
If there's a God, it's not subjective. If there's no God, it is subjective. And here's the real problem for the atheists. Without any objective meaning to it, the atheist either has to choose between some sort of hedonism based on personal preferences, or he's faced with nihilism. And Schirmer tries to get around that by saying, well, when we're looking at the heat death of the universe, we're looking at the wrong level of analysis. The problem with that is what exactly is the correct level of analysis we should be using? And when Schirmer uses it, does he succeed in finding meaning in an atheist life? What he does is he goes now to a debate that took place in the year 2009 at Columbia University. It pitted two philosophers against each other, a Christian philosopher named William Lane Craig and the Yale University philosopher Shelley Kagan. And Schirmer, when Craig is arguing against the idea of meaning in the atheist life, and he does appeal to heat death of the universe, Schirmer asserts that Craig committed Alvey's error here. Now, what Craig said was, pointing ahead to the heat death of the universe, he said, quote, "There will be no life, no heat, no light, only the corpses of dead stars and galaxies expanding into endless darkness. In light of that end, it's hard for me to understand how our moral choices have any sort of significance. There's no moral accountability. The universe is neither better nor worse for what we do. Our moral lives become vacuous because they don't have that kind of cosmic significance," unquote.
So is that the definition of meaning, cosmic significance? Do the atheist and Christian define meaning in the same way?
Well, the Christian will define it as something that has lasting effect, lasting for eternity, and that it's meaningful in that it is in keeping with the will of the creator and master of the universe. The atheist has very great difficulty without a God, without an objective standard of defining any sort of real meaning. But as you say, they try to get away from it. They try to get away from looking at cosmic significance. That's exactly what Schirmer is saying, that to look at the level of cosmic significance is the wrong level to look at. Now, it seems to me that Craig raises a legitimate issue here. And in point of fact, he said he has difficulty in understanding the answer. Well, if he has difficulty understanding the answer, it's a perfect chance for Shelley Kagan, the philosopher, to give him the answer and help him understand it. And if Kagan fails to do it, Schirmer could step into the breach and answer the question. But in fact, Kagan utterly fails to answer Craig's objection, and so does Schirmer. Schirmer thinks Kagan gave a good answer. He really didn't, though, because here is how Kagan answers Craig. Kagan, referencing Craig's example of godless torturers, Craig brought up that example that we would think that this is something evil that needs to be punished, but in a meaningless world, how do you really say it's evil and who actually punishes? So Kagan, referencing Craig's example of godless torturers, "This strikes me as an outrageous thing to suggest. It doesn't really matter. Surely it matters to the torture victims whether they're being tortured. It doesn't require that this makes some cosmic difference to the eternal significance of the universe for it to matter whether a human being is tortured. It matters to them, it matters to their family, and it matters to us."
Okay, I can obviously, it matters to the victims, and I could see it matters to the family, but is he sure it matters to us? I mean, how does it affect you personally, Kagan?
That's a very, very good question. And I'm wondering, is this really the best a Yale University philosopher can do? Because if you dissect his answer, what you see is an appeal to passion, an appeal to feelings, and then a group of bald assertions, things that are just said, but then packaged with a very proper righteous indignation.
How can the atheists even explain the passion and the righteous indignation? Why would they have that?
Well, he doesn't have to address that because he knows people feel it. This is why he can simply make bald assertions about it. But when you look at his answer, it comes down to this. It matters because it matters. This is the best our university philosopher can do. And I find that rather unimpressive. Let's look in detail at this attempted answer. First, according to Kagan, surely it matters to the torture victims whether they are being tortured.
Okay, well, yes, that does sound reasonable.
It might, on the surface. We can grant that most people prefer not to feel pain. We can certainly see, therefore, that it matters to the torture victims because torture is painful. But is that actual meaning, or is it a personal preference? Each person will naturally want to maximize his pleasure and minimize his pain until he dies, but is that still really meaning? I remember that humans, in the atheist worldview, are a bunch of organisms that descended by chance from primitive organisms that crawled out of primordial soup and learned to walk upright, each of whom breathes, eats, and reproduces until he dies, trying until then to avoid pain. And this is what Kagan and Schirmer offer as meaning to life. Let us remember this also, that according to atheism's necessary concomitant, the theory of evolution, humans are just one particular product of blind forces, like flies and rats and zebras. In light of this, why should the torture of a human matter any more than the suffering of a fly trapped in a spider's web, or a rat being swallowed by a snake, or a zebra being torn apart alive by a pride of lions?
Maybe it matters because the atheist is a human too, so if he hears about that happening to another human, it hits too close to home because he thinks, oh, well, that could happen to me too.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment, whether it really does matter to him or not. But overall, from this point of view, humans are still just animals. Now, from a Christian point of view, it certainly matters to us. We care if somebody's being tortured, but do we care about the fly or the rat or the zebra?
Well, some do.
Yeah, I guess some do, but they can't give a good reason for doing it, because the people who do that tend not to care about what happens to people. Now, one might say it matters to the fly or the rat or the zebra, but does it really matter to us? And the answer is no. Why should it? And if people are just animals like rats and zebras, why should the torture of a person we do not know in a distant land matter to us in an atheistic world? Does Schirmer or Kagan have an answer to this? If either of them does, he certainly doesn't tell us it. He simply makes the assertion that it matters, which is ironically meaningless. Are we just not supposed to ask why it happens because they don't have an answer?
Could it have something to do with supposedly evolved morality or something like that?
Oh, well, look at, they do appeal to evolved morality later on in their discussion, so we will look at that when we get to that part. But they don't appeal to it here. They simply assert that it matters. And I'm going to show that that's not really true. As we said, one can agree that torture matters to the victim because he's feeling pain and he doesn't want to feel pain, so to him it matters. We could agree that torture matters to the victim's family. For the same reason it matters to the victim, it causes them pain. And for the same reason, that's not ultimate meaning. But does it really matter to us as Kagan claims? That's the real question here. And let's answer it this way. Let's see. Worldwide, there are thousands of people being tortured today, probably tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands. Can Kagan or Sherman name even half a dozen of them? I very much doubt it.
Well, unless their names are publicized, why would they?
Well, but if they care, shouldn't they try to find out? How do they actually care about these nameless people being tortured? Could they, for example, identify the top 6 offending states when it comes to the use of torture? I very much doubt it. So in what sense does torture really matter to us when it's not ourselves or our family? And in what sense does it matter to Kagan and Shermer? No doubt if a specific case of a tortured person were brought to their attention, they would feel bad about it. But would they be more likely to do something about it, or have forgotten it by the next day in favor of things that really matter, like the stock market, last night's sports scores, or the latest antics of the Kardashians? If we look across the board at atheists who claim to care about torture, we see them going to the countries that practice brutal torture and oppression. They go there for their vacations, they buy their products. They don't seem to really think that the torture there matters to them. Okay, so it seems to me this argument of Kagan's is a non-starter. Even if torture really mattered to us, and the evidence suggests that it really doesn't, it would still be a choice of personal preferences. Worldwide, there are plenty of people who couldn't care less about torture, and there are plenty who would actually be happy to inflict it. So by what standard would we then say that the personal preference of Kagan and Shermer are superior to the personal preferences of these people?
So in that case, can an atheist say that there's no ultimate meaning to life, but each individual atheist has his own meaning of life, aka his personal preference?
Well, some of them will say that, and if you really push them, that's all they can get to, either that or to say there is no real meaning. But at this point, the atheists here are trying to argue that there is absolute meaning. And this is where we're looking at whether or not they can establish that case. And now we saw from this part so far, they've utterly failed to do that.
Does he have anything else?
Yes, he tries again. And again, he starts by accusing Craig of an error. And he says this, quote, Craig committed a related mistake when he argued that without God, there are no objective moral values, moral duties, or moral accountability. And that if life ends at the grave, then ultimately it makes no difference whether you live as a Stalin or a Mother Teresa. Call this Craig's categorical error, assessing the value of something by the wrong category of criteria.
Oh, that sort of sounds reasonable, but I think there are some atheists who want to be remembered in a certain way. So to them, it might matter if they were a Stalin or a Mother Teresa, depending on how they want posterity to think of them.
Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but please join us for the next part tomorrow. Same time and same place. If you enjoy our content and think this is important material, the best compliment you can pay is by sharing this with your friends and family. This helps us out a lot. Also, if you enjoyed today's program, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this podcast. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to the Truth in My Days podcast with John Torse. We would love to hear from you. Please feel free to share any questions or comments you may have. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, MeWe, and YouTube. Simply search Truth in My Days as one word. Again, Truth in My Days as one word, no spaces in between. And you can connect with us. You may also visit our website for more comprehensive material and to learn more about our ministry. Our website is truthinmydays.com. Thank you.